you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. If you are constantly solving people's problems for them, then you are always going to have to solve people's problems for them.
Happy 10th anniversary of a tremendous book that you co-wrote with Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. Leif, for those who have not read the book, how would you define extreme ownership?
A summary of extreme ownership is everything is your fault, the end. I think that's probably the best summary I've heard. That was by one of my teammates, a Marine that I served with, Dave Burke, who's on our team at Echelon Front, and we did a ton of operations together. And I think that's a great summary of the book. It's if you're going to make excuses, cast blame, point fingers, you put the blame on anybody or anything else but yourself, then you're never actually going to solve problems. And I think that's the key trait that for me and the co-author Jocko Willink, who was my boss in the SEAL teams, and I work with now at Echelon Front, that's what we see over and over again is the leaders who actually take ownership of problems, implement solutions. They don't blame other people. They don't make excuses. They don't blame circumstances. They actually take ownership of problems, implement solutions, and they get those problems solved, and it makes all the difference.
So it's a great summary of the book. Read the book. So let me ask you this. If the concept is you are responsible for everything, you are to own everything, does that mean you have to do everything? Do it all yourself?
That's a fantastic question, Jim. And the answer is you can't do it all yourself. You absolutely cannot do it all yourself. And I think this is a trap that a lot of leaders who misunderstand, readers of extreme ownership, and we've had millions of them now that love the book and love the concept, but they misunderstand this concept that I'm responsible for everything, so I got to do everything. And that is simply just not possible. When you get in any kind of a dynamic situation, when you have more than just a couple of people on a team, all of a sudden you're going to have people who can actually step up and take ownership of things and solve problems and move the team forward. We call that decentralized command in the military. It's a very powerful concept where leaders at every level step up to lead. And so that requires they know not just what to do, but why they're doing it, what the purpose, what the goal, and the end state is that they're trying to achieve. And this is the way that the best teams actually perform, is that leaders at every level of the team, even if you don't have a title or you don't have a team assigned to you, if you're might be just in charge of yourself and your piece of the mission, you got to be able to step up and lead. So as a leader, if you try to do everything, you're actually going to fail. So that doesn't mean you're not responsible for everything. Extreme ownership means that you are responsible for everything on the team. And that includes training your team, making sure they understand what the purpose, goal, and end state is, why they're doing what they're doing, and then and training them, mentoring them, and giving them ownership of problems so they can actually lead the team to accomplish that goal. And it's a fine line you got to balance. It's a dichotomy. You're responsible, but you certainly can't do everything.
So is that the point of the dichotomy of leadership? Another book, another great book. Is that what we're talking about right there? Like, what is the dichotomy of leadership?
That is the dichotomy. Everything in leadership, you're getting pulled in two different directions, and both of those directions are right. You got to be responsible for everything in your world. You got to take extreme ownership. That is correct. You also have to delegate. You have to use decentralized command and let your leaders at every level of the team step up and lead. So both of those things are correct, and you've got to find the balance between those two things. And I think that's one of the most challenging things as leaders. And we wrote about this in chapter 12 of Extreme Ownership, when that came out 10 years ago. And we saw a lot of leaders struggle with those concepts, struggle with the fact that they need to be a leader and step up and lead and make calls and direct the team. But they also have to be a follower. They have to be able to follow the direction of their senior leaders. They have to follow if a junior person on the team comes up with a great idea and says, hey, why don't we do this? And a good leader is going to be able to say, great, why don't you take lead on that? I'll follow. So you've got to be able to, you got to be default aggressive to solve problems, be proactive, make things happen, but you can't be reckless. You have to find the balance there. You have to mitigate the risk that you can control. So there's so many of these things that you actually have to find the balance in it. And so after Extreme Ownership, we wrote the follow-on book in 2018, the Dichotomy of Leadership, and we just published a new version of that came out last year. And I think that really answers so many questions for leaders that we have. One of the key ones is like when to mentor, when to fire, discipline, but not rigid. All these things that are that a leader has to find balance in. So that's why we wrote Dichotomy, to try to answer those questions that were common questions that leaders would approach us.
So Leif, help me with this. In terms of decentralized command, I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying. What if, though, and you work with so many different groups and so many different people in all sorts of walks of life, so many different teams. What if, okay, so you can't do it all yourself. You're ultimately responsible for everything, but you can't do it all yourself. So what if you're that person? What if you're the leader and you're the hardest worker on the team and you recognize this concept of decentralized command? However, the other members of the team do not want to take more on. In fact, the other members of the team think to themselves, no, I don't want to do more. I actually want to do less, but I want more money. So what if it's going the other way and that's your team? How do you turn that thing around? How do you work that to your favor? What do you do with that?
Well, that's a big dilemma. I think what you have to do as a leader is help people understand that if someone's goal is to make more money, or maybe they want to take on greater responsibility, or maybe they want to have more ownership of plans or strategy or execution, that the pathway to do that is for them to perform better, right? For them to actually take on greater responsibility, for them to actually deliver on some results. And I think as a leader, you have to make sure that people understand what that pathway is, for them. I think sometimes people have kind of an expectation that may be unrealistic, and oftentimes I talk to leaders. Oh, I mean, I want a promotion, or I want to get paid more. Or I want to trade. The boss is doing all this stuff, and I actually want to take that on. But then when I see what they're doing, they're often not performing in the tasks that they're currently assigned. So, the number one thing that you got to do if you want a greater responsibility and opportunity for promotion or greater pay, is to perform. You got to deliver on the tasks that you're responsible for, and so that's something that you have to set that expectation. You have to show people, if their performance is not where it should be, you actually have to provide some guidance to them to get them where they need to be. But I think the idea oftentimes, right, of like, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. These are things that if you are constantly solving people's problems for them, then you are always going to have to solve people's problems for them. And you become what we call the easy button. Whereas if someone's coming to you, if you're my boss, Jim, and I work for you, and I'm coming to you and I'm saying, hey, Jim, here's the problem. Here's what's going on. What do you want me to do? And then you solve the problem for me. Well, you just trained me that the next time that I have a problem, I'm going to come to you and I need you to solve the problem for me. And that's all I'm ever going to do is to lean on you to solve the problems. You're not actually teaching me to solve the problems myself, which means that you are constantly looking down and in on the organization, on the tactical problems. As a leader, you need to be looking up and out on the strategic problems and to think about where you want your team or your organization to be 5 years or 10 years down the road. And so as a leader, that's a real easy thing to get sucked into. So when I come to you and say, hey, here's what's going on, boss, what do you want me to do? What you should say is, hey, what do you think we should do to solve the problem?
Listen, before you go, you have a great weekly newsletter, a leadership newsletter. It's a great read. What is it called, and how would our viewers and our listeners get a chance to take a look at it?
Yeah, we have a newsletter called the Extreme Ownership Rundown, and it's I get spammed with emails all the time, and this really was designed not to spam people, but just to actually provide some weekly leadership guidance. So we just write on a particular topic. Usually, it's a current topic that we've been talking to other leaders about, and we've got tens of thousands of people that utilize that as something just to keep leadership top of mind. It's called the Extreme Ownership Rundown, and you can go sign up for it at echelonfront.com. But it's a resource that people use to just think about a leadership concept, think about how to apply it in their world, and we try to just give them an actual step to take to just evaluate something that's going on in their world. Maybe we're talking about cover and move that week, building relationships with people, evaluate a relationship that in your life where there's maybe some frictions, and you need to go in and actually build a better relationship with people. It's just encouragement to stay on the path as a leader and to constantly keep your leadership development top of mind.
I love that. That's a great thing, and it's a great tool, and it's something everybody should look into. Like I said, Leif, at the very top, I said I felt the need to check in, to plug in, to get some of this. I'm so much better for it. I appreciate you. I appreciate the relationship. I appreciate the friendship, and I appreciate the great content, man. You are the absolute best.
Appreciate you, Jim. Always ready to talk to you. And love the great questions. Love your show. Keep getting after it.